Women on a Green Mission follow along as two friends document their unfurling permaculture journeys.
Join our chats each week where we'll be sharing how we and others apply permaculture to our gardens and daily life.
We're no experts. We're at the start of our journey, fumbling our way to a greener life. We love your company along the way. Welcome. We're back again today. Another podcast, another amazing guest. So we've got Lachie here from Tree Frog Permaculture. And hello, Elise.
Oh, hello, Jo.
And Lachie, hello, welcome.
Thanks for having me. How you going?
Oh, really, really well. We're really excited to have you here. So, you and I met at the, I'm going to get this wrong, the Smart Living Festival? Living Smart.
Living Smart.
Yeah. Living Smart. There you go. It was my first year as a visitor, and you're a bit of a an old hatter at it. So you and I met there. So Jen from the Ogre Shed mentioned that.
Yes, that's the connection.
You'd helped her quite a bit, and that you were going to be there and to pop in and say hello. So off I went on a bit of a mission to see where you were and come and introduce myself. So obviously we stayed in contact, and you've agreed to come on today, and we're just really stoked with that. So
happy to.
Before we get in, we would like to acknowledge where we're recording on. So since I'm at your place today, Elise, where are we recording?
Oh my goodness, Awabakal. I'm 99% sure we're on Awabakal land.
Yeah, I've just spoken to some people that have disagreements around that, so I don't want to get into the politics.
We actually spoke to Meg McGowan, and she was really interesting because she's the first guest we've had, and I think obviously she's very educated, especially about Indigenous people and where she lives and those kinds of things. And she was saying that she's on disputed land and was explaining that. And I thought that was really interesting to learn about because I knew that was a thing, but she's the first person I'd really spoken to that had that knowledge about her land and the people that lived there before. So, But where are you recording on, Lachie?
Similarly, Awabakal or Warramai in Lambton, so not far away. Yeah.
No, you're only a stone's throw.
We could have done this face to face.
Yeah. I mean, do you want to just get in the car and
see you in 10?
See you in 5. No.
But I suppose we'd love to hear a little bit about you and your journey. So let's, I suppose, start at the start because that's always a really good place. How did you come into permaculture? Like, what was your life pre-permaculture, and then what happened for you to do what the rest of us have done and fall madly in love?
My first love. Basically, my mum's always been an avid gardener, but more on the cottage garden side of things. Used to do garden competitions and stuff.
Oh wow!
And my I guess it runs in the family. My grandmother always had this really interesting sort of a subtropical garden in Sydney. And so I'd go there every Christmas from a really young age, and I would just be at wonder in this immersive, really diverse, curious garden space. And so I guess that's really what I'd attribute a lot of my love for the garden world from. My dad's always been his profession is a weed agronomist, if you know what that is. So he's worked for a long time. He worked for the government.
So not weed.
Yeah. Weed agronomist. Would you like that clarify?
Is that a euphemism?
Sorry, Dad. You've been outed. No, weeds is in
hemp before hemp was a thing.
Weeds. Look, weed is in our concept of a plant growing in a place that we don't want it.
Right.
So in agriculture, they're the things that you can't harvest and make money from, and they're getting in the way of your monoculture, basically.
Right.
That's who. So he's very much herbicide focused and that sort of thing.
Yeah, right.
And I kind of went in the opposite direction. So I prefer the permaculture approach of integrated ecological systems and balance, which really floats my boat. Background in biology, ecology, but I'll get to that. So I ended up basically going into. I did all the science I could in high school, and then went to uni in Newcastle. Which is why I came here from Tamworth, apart from needing to escape that place. And
Very
no shade.
Tamworth.
And basically, I did a batch of science, and I was just like figuring my way, and I just did as much biology, ecology as I could because that's what really got me excited. And started doing postgrad research with the green and golden bell frog and the amphibian lab there. And I started figuring out that if I was going to be stuck in the that world, I would be very much stuck in labs and on computers for an enormous amount of my life, which sends me a little bit crazy. So I sort of got a fair way through there, and I was just like, yeah, look. And there are some other funding things which I struggle with on an ethical basis, like where the money comes from to pay for some of this stuff is sort of it's in opposition to the actual goals of the research sometimes, and it sort of hurts me. And a lot of the permaculture thing that floats my boat too is like the strong ethical approach. Yeah, so I ended up just going, look, I'm going to lose my mind, and I'm going to just build frog ponds for people, and do it that way. Make my mark. Like, not about me making my mark. Make a difference to the world that is suffering around me, which I'm pretty sensitive to. Always have been, and then I came across permaculture, and I was just like, oh, what? this is
Where has
all
this
of
been all my
the
life?
yeah, this is like all of the stuff that I love and know, plus all of like the ethics and principles and just like everything in one package, with an element of like the always keeping your mind open to new information and adapting and growing, and never stop learning and all that stuff that I really firmly believe in. So yeah, I don't like it when people call it a cult. I would say it's
Permaculture.
a
Yeah.
strong approach to life, but it's certainly not something I'm forcing on anybody. It's just a really good framework. Yeah. Yeah, so then I ended up starting the business with a friend at the time, and they quickly, after a year, found out that they they didn't really want to do that, and I was like, oh, well, I'm good. Let's go. So yeah, 14 years later, here I am. Did my PDC through Tom Toogood, who was a local teacher at the time.
Still
Yeah,
operating or not?
he's not still operating. He's very much
Yeah.
retired. He's down Morisset Way, and getting on.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he was sort of like a good stepping point there, and he's really really keen teacher. And of course, being a very poor student, it was hard for me to pay for a high end, like, and that's a big part of my thing, right? Like, I think permaculture you should not be overcharging for this, as much as possible. I mean, you need to make money in this world. Sadly, I'd love to do it all for free, but it is really important to me that the lower socioeconomic bands of the society get their hands or get access to this, without having that effective paywall. So I came up against that myself, and so that's been a really big driving force for me as
Wow.
well.
So really make
Yeah.
it that, as affordable as possible while still being
Yeah.
able to
Yeah.
have that sustainable business for you so that you
Mm.
can still continue to get this information out and share your knowledge and
Yeah.
information with everyone, but still pay
Yeah.
your bills at the same time
Yeah.
because as
Yeah.
much as we'd all love to live in an alternate economy,
Yeah.
for everything, unfortunately, the banks don't really see that as an option when you need to pay mortgage or your
No, no,
landlord.
they don't.
Most landlords don't see that as an option if you've got to pay rent. So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
it's finding that
Hmm.
balance and then,
Yeah.
coming to terms with that inner conflict. And I think a lot of people in this space have that same conflict, Lachie, as
Yeah.
what you do. And I'm
Yeah.
sure you would have had those
Yeah.
conversations as well.
Every day I'm still battling with it. I think it's getting easier,
Yeah.
but yeah, it
Yeah.
hurts a little bit.
there's some cool ways of doing it though. Like there's a lady, it's not permaculture based, it's like a women's retreat. And you can contact her and she'll actually let you, there's like scholarships she has for it. And then for single mums, Indigenous, there's a couple other marginalised kind of groups. She gives a big discount too. So the people who can pay. And then if you can't, you can apply.
Yeah.
And then she also does like a half price if you want to run like a course, or you can volunteer, or you can make some of the signs up for the day. And so I think there's lots of ways that you can make these things more accessible. Or like Meg, she's aging, a lady we spoke to, she's aging now, and so she teaches in the morning, and then they provide free labor in the afternoon because she can't manage her garden anymore.
Gotcha. Yep.
So there's lots of ways I think we can think about it and brainstorm.
Yeah, I do offer. I to make it less complicated, I have to say, like, if you feel like you can't afford my rates, just please be honest and let me know, and we can come to an agreement. But I struggle to make those judgment calls around someone's wealth levels, because you can there's no way you can tell from the outside half the time, most of the time, to be honest. But
we don't walk around with badges on ourselves, do we, going, I earn this much and this is my disposable income.
And even then, it's not even about like disposable income. Like someone with only a small amount of disposable income might have a really high, they might really value the service so highly that they want to pay the full amount because they know they're supporting something that they truly believe in. So it's a very dynamic and world in flux there. So it's a bit of a minefield to get your way through, and with a mindset like mine. But it's all part of the battle, isn't it? Really.
And then besides the business, you do a few other kind of things. We were talking before we kind of hit the record button about what you do with local councils and some of your other offerings that you have. So if you can let us know a bit more about those and what you do.
So I have various events run through different councils over many years now. Lake Mac's been getting me to do various things for quite a while. From workshops around making urban food forests, to insect hotels, to natural pest control, to nutrient cycling, water saving systems, like you name it, basically. Of course, some of them are more popular than others and are repeatedly asked for, like natural pest control is a big one. A lot of pollinator stuff came up after the whole varroa mite debacle. I did a lot more, bit of a kick up of native bees and other pollinator stuff, and the general belief around understanding around pollinators is only European bees can do it, and it's like, well, actually,
that's the only insect that pollinates. Everyone should know.
And there were no flowers ever getting pollinated before we brought in this European bee. Never.
It just didn't happen.
It was just a desert before Europeans arrived. Anyway. So so many things keeps me very interested, and I've done a few things now for seed saving workshops through Newcastle Council. The Port Stephens Council's got me to do a few things sporadically, and now Singleton next week, Thursday. That was natural pest control again. Right.
It is, yeah. I'm going to that one, so yes.
I get a bit confused. They're
kind of all just roll together after a while.
I've got it on paper somewhere. It's fine. Yeah.
Sorry, you got your notes. You just need to show up and off we go.
Yeah, no, I don't need notes anymore. It's all out of the old nog, which I find much easier to do. Yeah, it's fun for me. I like teaching, so it's a good time. And some kids stuff as well. So homeschool kids. So some homeschool groups have gotten me to come
fantastic.
I did a native bee workshop for them, and intro to permaculture design for one as well, which was interesting. They were all very receptive. Yeah,
that's very cool.
So what sort of age groups, like with the homeschooling, and that's something that we wanted to dive into a little bit too, is kids in permaculture. So what sort of age groups do you do your workshops for?
So I mean, I've even done some schools.
Yeah.
Lake Mac was actually running a program which I think it got canned a couple of years ago. I think COVID kind of got in the way.
Mm.
But yeah, so all the way from probably, or I mean, some of those homeschool classes have like quite a range because they just like lump them together.
Yeah.
So I
Yep.
think it was like 5 up till 12 or something in one of the classes.
So cool.
So I try to. Part of the beauty of my brain is I can roll with things pretty well. So I won't be told what ages there are, but I'll be able to do like a quick survey of the room in my brain and kind of go, okay, like this is where I can
This is
All
aiming at
where I
right.
you, and I
can
can aim
play
that at
this.
you. And, yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so it's helpful to kind of be able to flex a little bit on that because you just
Yeah,
don't know what you're going
absolutely.
to walk into
Well, it's
sometimes.
responding to change, isn't it? Like
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
it's the context that you're in. It's what's
yeah,
in front of
yeah,
you, and you're responding to that. And
yeah.
how do the kids sort of respond to you and the content that you deliver?
Uh, Depends on the kids, but mostly really good. I manage it pretty well. There was a class, was it last year maybe, who look, I count myself as neurodiverse, and I can see other neurodiverse people around, and there was one of the kids that was a little bit struggling to maintain
Hmm.
interest over the period. I try to make things very entertaining. I do a lot of
Yeah.
movement,
Yeah.
I have a lot of examples and things to
Mm.
get hands on. So in that situation, at least.
Yeah.
But I had to actually get them up to pretend to be a flower. So I could be the okay, because I was talking about different flower types and how like different bees are different, have different like abilities at pollinating the different. Some of them are a deep flower, some of them are a big open flower, and so I'm like, okay, so how are you going to be a big open flower? And so you know, it was weird, but
I
it
want to go.
It was
worked.
engaging, I'm
I want to come and be
Um,
a flower. That
sure.
would have been
yeah,
good
look,
fun.
anytime anyone can be a flower. You can even
Well,
choose the flower you want to be.
Yes.
That's right.
speaking of
Yeah.
flowers, I was going on a deep
Mm.
dive on your Instagram. We'll call it research for the
You were
podcast.
Yeah.
stalking. You were totally stalking.
And some of
Same,
the
same.
stuff you have, yeah, same. What's the difference?
Yeah.
Semantics.
Yeah.
But some of the stuff you have in your backyard is amazing. And the recent one we saw about the cactus
Oh yeah.
and
My
harvesting
excellent
it.
stable camera work with my left hand while I'm holding a
Yeah.
blowtorch. Yeah.
You did well. You did very
Uh,
well.
So tell us
Look.
about your backyard a bit, what you got going on.
Yeah. So I'm lucky enough. Look, I'm lucky enough to have a very, very cool landlord. Getting into the property market hasn't been something I've achieved at this point, and for obvious reasons, various of them actually. But so I've been here about 10 to 12 years. I didn't do the math
Wow.
properly, maybe, but it's been quite a while.
Yeah.
And I came across Ken, my landlord, who's a friend as well now, who this was his family home and has quite a large backyard in Lambton. And
Mhm.
so I did a design because it was all weeds and gnarly with a few fruit trees randomly placed. And so I set it up as a permaculture garden for him while he was here, and that was over 2 years. And then he moved out with his partner and wife at the time, and I moved in, and I have converted it to my basically urban food forest, and it's
Wow.
evolved ever since. So I have a lot of container culture
Mhm.
closer to the house because there's just a lot of paving. I have actually removed a
Mhm.
lot of paving as well. I think I think humans can get a little excited with their hard surfacing.
Oh my
I was
Yeah.
going to
God.
say at times, but let's say a lot of the time.
Yeah.
It's a little bit of a sickness, and so along with lawns, don't let me get started on
Oh,
lawns.
lawns.
Yeah.
Well, lawns are at least better
Uh,
than pavers.
it's true. They at least absorb water and
Yeah.
fix carbon, whatever.
They
But
also they
Carbon.
they've
also
got
have a purpose though, right? Like
Yeah, yeah, I
everything
yeah,
guess.
again, it's in that moderation and
Context.
but
context.
in
Yeah.
Context for sure.
balance, in
In
balance, yeah.
balance, yes.
So I've
Yeah.
got massive parks across the road. So there's an enormous amount of grass surface available to the local people with a very short walk. So we didn't feel the need to keep any backyard
Yep.
space as lawn here, much to my joy. So I have basically right to the back, it goes all the way to a laneway. And sadly, there's a Norfolk Island pine at the very north end, which very
Ooh.
tall, quite allelopathic being suppressing the growth of other things, very thirsty and all that. So best thing to coexist with that are like more your perennial fruit trees and things. So I've got my chickens up the top end, and their immediate straw yard is sort of surrounding the Norfolk Island pine. And so, I don't have to worry about much growing in there because the chickens won't allow it anyway.
I was going to say, no, they'd take care of that pretty quick.
Yeah, that's right. And so then I've got like their extended yard, which comes maybe halfway down with a decent fence to stop them freewheeling into my veggie production area, because that was a problem for a couple of years, and they can work against you. I'm sure you're aware.
We have that same problem. I actually went out. We've got 900 fences, and we're redesigning that whole space. And we've got them we've got one integrated at the moment, but we're looking to redesign and totally integrate the ducks and one of the chicken runs into the veggie growing area. But yeah, they get a little bit excited when we come out of the morning, and they just, I don't know, they just bounce over the fence, and then all of a sudden, like, they're in the veggie patch, and they're just like, oh my God, this is fantastic. And it's like, dude, quick, get them out.
Yeah. So I got very sick of that happening on the rig. So we went, all right, that's it. A solid fence. It can be a climbing vertical structure. Great, multiple uses. But yeah, so everywhere beyond the Great Divide is basically where I throw all of my material, my clippings and like not all my scraps. They're going into worm tubes and stuff now. But many nutrient cycling pathways to be chosen from. So most of my stuff goes up there and is just turned into beautiful soil by the chickens in their own time, and then I can harvest that to top up beds and stuff. But yeah, so there's a west strip and an east strip of that chicken area beyond the Great Divide. And they're fenced off from the chicken action most of the time until there's plenty of greenery in there for them to go and browse on. So it's like a crop rotation type situation where they can go in. Any of the fruit trees that I have that are fruit fly susceptible, like Queensland fruit fly, my arch nemesis, awful stuff. Look, it's a native fly. We should be friendly to it to a point, I guess. But let the chickens eat them. It hurts. Yeah, so I've got all those up there. So basically, the chickens are the frontline control of any of the fruit fly life cycle within my fence line. Anyway, I can't control other people's in the local area, but hey, I'll try. I'll try through education.
Handing out leaflets on the weekend.
That's right. Yeah.
Keep chickens under your fruit trees.
Dress in black at night, and I'll be like a fruit fly ninja, sneaking into yards and cleaning up rotting fruit on the ground. Yeah, I don't have time or energy for that. So try to keep all that up there. Any of the stuff that's less problematic this side. I mean, chickens are the best forefront to deal with that whole thing. So good. So, and I've got a banana circle. Which all the grey water gets pumped up to because it goes uphill. So I don't know if you want this level of detail. You stop me when you want.
Absolutely. Why not? Absolutely, because the listeners are, we're, either they're watching us talking on YouTube or listening to the pod. But this is building a really good mental picture. Like as you're talking, I'm going through. I'm picturing all the details.
If you've got photos and stuff, we can put them in our little Facebook group. It's a private group, so anybody wants to join. And then when the guests come on, people can see the plans and bits and bobs and kind of engage further after. So
yeah, if you like, I could just do a bit of a mini video tour and just give you the video.
That'd be phenomenal.
That's easy. Yeah,
that'd be good.
You just have to excuse the occasional bit of untamed vegetation here and there.
That's reality.
Hey, that's a good thing to have, though, right? Like, and that's see that too, especially a lot of our audience may not be into permaculture or be into, say, a lot of organic gardening and understand the benefits of actually leaving something to just live its full cycle, a
Yeah.
couple of
Yeah.
times over. That's
Go
my
to
excuse
sea.
anyway.
Go to
Um,
sea.
It is not an excuse. It's a strategy.
it's a strategy. That's it. It's a strategy that I haven't
Yeah.
actually touched that area for 2 years, but it's doing its thing. It doesn't need me.
Hey, it's probably biodiverse, all right?
It's very
Sure it
biodiverse.
is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the banana circle, because we've got a slope that sort of goes it goes up to the north. So it's not
Right.
the ideal perfect slope, which would be like
Mm-hmm.
north facing slope. It's technically south facing, but not so much that it's a problem for like winter sun gain and that sort of thing.
Mm.
And basically, like all the grey, I've made sure everyone who lives in this space is using the appropriate washing
Yeah.
cleaning products.
Yeah.
Otherwise, Lachie gets a little shirty, and
Yeah.
so because the bananas are looking a little weird, yeah, they know, they're pretty good. But so yeah, the bananas cop the most of that, and then because we've got a clay pan, any excess moisture moves down through the topsoil and filters through into my annual garden beds, which are sort
Mhm.
of the next section down.
Yep.
Um, Western edge, which of course afternoon sun, harsh, mean, nasty. It's Australia. We got more sun than we can handle a lot of the time. So things like olive are on the west, which
Mm-hmm.
heat hardy, still fruiting. The more silver your leaves are, the better they are at reflecting light and heat. Things like that. A couple of citrus trees that can handle a
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
bit of that too, but not all the way on the west. Natives, some of the natives are really good there.
Mhm.
Always design a good native backbone into a garden, because that's like the perennial stuff that's like the habitat where the beneficials go
Mm.
and then come back to your annuals, because your annuals are only hanging around for a season. That sort of thing. Lots of different herbs and things mixed around all the different annual beds and stuff. I've got wicking beds on the driveway out the front because it's an abnormally wide driveway, and I'm like, wasted space.
I
Um,
can use this.
yeah, absolutely. Man, there's mulberry, which is a bit closer to the house
Oh,
there, but
cool.
being a deciduous tree, it affords a
Yeah.
bit more summer shade to a lot of the paving area, which is like
Yeah.
a heat sink. And so
It
it's a lot
sounds
of
like a
like
massive space.
it's pretty solid. Like I don't I rue the day I leave here because it's just so well developed now, and the biodiversity is like on point. And I have like ponds dotted around the whole place, like
Oh
mostly container
wow.
ponds.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I've got an enormous population of striped marsh frogs, which do a lot of pest control for me.
Yep.
Mm.
In fact, the difference of the big brown cockroaches, like the port
Oh
Mm-hmm.
roaches we
yeah,
get
yeah,
in Newcastle's a great place for them.
yeah. Mhm.
Um, they chew on just about anything at night. But we had a really big population of those outside years ago,
Mm.
and I really don't have an issue anymore, because like they're a
Wow.
ground, and so they're one of the main feeds of the frog
So cool.
population. So like
Yeah.
it's capped off, it's balanced out that
Yep.
issue.
Wow.
So
There's
you got
just
some
so many good
really fat frogs
examples.
hanging around.
Oh, they're pretty obese, yeah.
Yeah. It's just like frogs, kicking back on a
They're
lounge with a beer
still.
going, oh.
Oh, I can't do another roach, man.
Yeah. I can't do it.
Domestic
um,
frogs.
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, that's right. Yeah. So, unfortunately, I'd love some more frog diversity, but if you look at this place on like the satellite image, it's like
Mm.
this block of greenery, and then there's like it's really
Wow.
sad how the color is very much
Oh,
grays and light browns, like
Yeah.
for a couple of blocks, and I'm like, oh, it's a bit of an oasis anyway.
nice. I
Which
bet they love
means
it.
like, yeah, coming and going from other places is a little difficult when you've got like
Yeah.
busy roads to cross and all that
Yeah.
caper. I guess it means I'm a little safer from possums. However, I have had some possums this year.
Yeah. Right.
They
That's
found
a good
me.
thing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
The word
yeah.
the
So
word got out. Yep.
The
yeah,
frogs
yeah.
get
They
famous.
they put out the PA, and I've had a family of ringtails hanging out, and which quite
Oh,
honestly I'm so happy for. Like, I didn't prune back the mango because they were mainly feeding on that.
Oh, cool.
And I was just like, you know what,
you
you
can
guys
have it.
need something. It's fine.
Yep.
Unfortunately, the mango has now died. It wasn't the possums. It was probably a wayward neighbour. But let's not let that go
Oh,
Oh,
too.
no.
You can't control your fence lines, can you?
Wow.
I was
no.
controlling it in that it wasn't on their side, and they would get whatever mangoes they wanted. But hey, there are some
So,
people out there
what?
that don't really get it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
They don't
it's all right.
understand. Yep.
What's
Yeah,
it?
yeah.
What's it like? I know you touched on it already. So
Mm.
you're living in a housemate situation with other people, then?
It's curious. So myself and my
In
partner
terms of
live.
permaculture, not like what kind of people they are.
Yeah.
Oh no, 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 no. I mean, I wasn't going to go into character judgments. I promise.
Roommate
So
politics.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It'll go down real well.
Milk.
No,
That's
no,
a whole other
they're
podcast.
really good.
Yeah.
So there's a young family in the front part of the house,
Yeah.
and so it's quite a large house. The old part of the house, or the original part of the house, is has been divided off from. So there's like an add-on section with upstairs and downstairs, and
Mm-hmm.
so I'm in the downstairs add-on. I have two people above me, and there's three adults and two children in the front.
It sounds like
But
something out of retro suburbia.
yeah, sort of. Except I guess I'm the main garden person, and so
Yeah.
Hmm.
like I don't think their interests really lie in that at all. Which is it's fine. But their kids have grown up in the garden, and I teach them as much as I can, if they
Yeah.
know it
Yeah.
or not.
And they just use the
um,
space as well, obviously, the
yeah,
garden and
it's commons.
yeah.
Yeah, but there's some things you have to sort of establish with a community that isn't. It's an interesting one. This is like a community gardens. This applies to as well, and a lot of different communal living spaces where
Mm.
it feels a little bit difficult or unfair when some people are doing all the work and then
Hmm.
others just want to take. And that's
Hmm.
something that's not happening. I mean, apart from the occasional kids thing, which I'm happy to support as long as they're also learning
Yeah.
the good habits, which are like, only take as much as you can have and leave some for others. And also, if you take some, you want to give back to the system some and things like that.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I do like to share as much produce as I can, but I also, for things like, like carrots and beets and like stuff that's a whole plant is one thing. Cut and come again, leafy greens and herbs and
Mm.
stuff, which are just like constantly regenerating. It's like fair
Yeah.
game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But there are some things I sort of go like, well, if you want something that's a little rarer and like more energy investment, then you
Hmm.
probably want to do something for it. I
Yeah.
don't play
Yeah.
a really hard line there, but uh,
Yeah.
it's one of those tricky things, I guess, with communal
I suppose
Yeah.
it's that
spaces.
education process, and yeah,
Yeah.
getting someone to understand um, what the system is and how they fit into the system, and what
Mm,
Yeah.
they when they give back, what that
mm,
means for the next time they want that
Yeah.
beet or that carrot, or they're
mm.
coming to chop a
I just
whole cabbage head off or
yeah.
something like that. It's that whole
Yeah, that's a good one.
understanding that
Yeah.
what you do that, and unless you do something now back for it, you're not going to get that
Mm.
again. Like this is a
I
Mm,
this is a
yeah.
once off thing.
I just think
Yeah.
yeah.
it's interesting in terms of like, not everybody in our society and community are going to be into what we're into. So how do we coexist in that space without
Yeah.
being, resentful and without being, you can't play with us. Like I
Hmm.
think that's a big thing that people need to kind of overcome when it
Yeah.
comes to permaculture.
Yeah. It's a
Um,
really
and
interesting
yeah, like how do
aspect.
you
Mm,
do that fair share with an open hand when you know necessarily it's not going to come back to you? And
mm,
how do we kind of integrate these things in our daily life? Because when you are living with people that aren't necessarily into the same thing you are,
mm.
how do you make that work and make it
Yeah.
um
And
yeah
I've thought a lot about this in a community respect. And even with like, I'm not like a doomsdayist or anything, but I mean like there's a lot of bad things going on in the world around us, has been for a long time. It's hard not to think that we might possibly have like some sort of massive fallout at some point, you know. And so, you know, when society gets a bit iffy, you know, you got all these people that, and this is just like an extreme example, right? I'm not saying that like this is definitely on the cards, but it is just a possibility of many. And so you've got like the people who are keen growers and have the knowledge and the all the that stuff, and then you've got a whole lot of the population who are very much either not interested or not exposed or
Yep.
just not in the
Not their
space.
journey.
Yeah, and it's like, and that's the beauty of like diversity in humans is like people have
Totally.
different fortes all across the board, and we need gardeners, and we need engineers, and we need social workers, and we need teachers, and we need
Mm.
doctors, blah blah blah. So, and it's hard to have all of the skills in the world in one brain. So if you focus on a few things, you can do them better. But it also means, yeah, you've got these different levels of expertise, and so meeting those up is an interesting sort of a joining point. Yeah. So I think. If I mean a lot of the more alternative schooling practices now are sort of teaching more of this stuff, and I think like permaculture and doesn't even have to be just permaculture strictly, but like doing some of that base, like this is where food comes from, this is what meat is and was before
Yep.
slaughter, all this stuff that we're totally disconnected with because it's like
Yeah.
basic stuff and it's food security related and water related, and all this is like critical for survival of all humans. And really it's a commonality across the board, which should really be used to bring us together, if anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You cannot escape the need for food and water and clean
Yes.
food and clean water, you
Yeah.
know. So
The basics of life. Yep.
yeah, exactly. So it's a really interesting one. So you know, with the context of a community garden, and it's like a repeated issue in community gardens because you get people that just walk in, it's a communal
Yeah.
space, and they just go, "Oh, you know, this is
This
being
is
grown
great.
here." Yeah, and
Yeah.
it's also I think there's like a scarcity mindset some people
Yeah.
get
Yeah.
stuck in as well, where they just go like
Yeah.
grab it
It's
and
funny that you
run.
say that, Lachie,
Yeah.
because my I was trying to
Mm.
explain a food share, a produce share with
Mm.
my parents, and my dad, is a very very good human and a good soul. He's was a police officer for his whole life,
Mm.
so he has a very particular view of the world,
Yeah.
being an old school cop. But
Yeah.
he said, but how does see people could just come in and just take? I just said,
Yeah.
yeah, and he said,
Yeah.
but like, wouldn't you just get people that come in and just take everything? And I said, well,
Uh-huh.
not necessarily, because there's the core group of people that share and they educate, and people then
Mm.
get an understanding about how these systems work. That you can't just rock up and take every week,
Mm.
because then there's nothing left to take. So
That's right.
it's about that education. I said, yeah, sure. There's people that come in and go, oh, freebies, great. I'm going to take the lot and
Mm.
bugger off. But if we can, spend that 30 seconds even just educating someone to say, hey, next time, what can you bring, or what can you do, or
Yeah.
what skill do you have that you can share, or knowledge that you have that you can share whilst you're here, so you're giving something back.
Yeah, come
And
along
yeah,
to a
you can
working
see like
bee,
he
you
was
know?
just like, but like he's
Yeah.
seeing it through his lens, and he
Mm.
really sort of struggled with how this is something that happens, around many different places on a very regular basis.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it's an interesting because it comes from like a top-down approach society, I think, that sort of thinking in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
And so I've seen some community gardens that have just gone, oh, we just have to exclude the public. So they invest in a large fence. And then it's like, this doesn't feel like a community garden now. It feels like a prison. It's a vegetable prison. Like, what's going on? It
Let
doesn't
the
feel,
vegetables out.
We're really well fed while we're
Free
in
the
there, but
vegetables.
yeah, emancipate, free food. Yeah. Yeah, it's like, but it's,
Lake school.
and I understand where people have gotten to that point, but
Mm.
it doesn't help draw people into the garden and
Yep.
encourage that like inclusive and that integrated kind of mindset.
Yeah.
It makes you feel very much like you got to keep the others out. It's very
Yeah, us them.
Yeah, that's it.
I
That's the other
saw.
yeah,
I'm
mentality.
on like a community garden from up where we've bought land. Their Facebook group, like their closed
yeah,
Facebook group, and I
mm,
joined it. And so they've got some beds that are community beds, and then some
mm,
beds that are someone owns, looks
Mm.
after, whatever, and that's their
yeah,
bed kind of thing.
yeah,
So they've kind of done it
yeah,
like that. And then
yeah.
someone got on all ranty that someone stole a pumpkin from a private bed and blah blah
Oh
blah.
boy,
But the
yeah,
conversation was really interesting to read because
mm,
people were saying, well, what if that person really needed that
Mm-hmm.
pumpkin? Like, how do you feel
yeah,
about it then? And like, some
yeah,
of them were quite judgy comments, but when you actually read through them and people were kind of putting these hypotheticals, and then someone's like, oh, well, it shouldn't matter. Like, if you really need a car, you don't go stealing one. And then, just people unpacking what that looked like and how their ethics sat with that. And I just think,
yeah,
particularly because it's a safe space, I guess, because people know each other somewhat in that group. Like, I've come to it as a newbie and a bit of an outsider, but it was really
mm,
interesting to read the comments because that's part of it, isn't it? Like, unpacking, well, where do our ethics sit and how do we feel about
yeah.
this? And should we as a community grow more in the community patch then and stop focusing so much on private patches? Or
I mean,
how do we make this work?
always grow more, and then you can share
Yeah.
Yeah.
more, right? Like,
Yeah.
Yep. That's what
it's
I took
there's
But
out of
it
that
was
is grow more pumpkins next year.
interesting
Yeah.
because, yeah,
economy of
there's people.
scale.
Yeah, people were
Yeah,
taking the food, and someone said, well, they might really need it. And someone said,
yeah.
but is that fair that they just come and take it? And it
Yeah.
was interesting. I
It's
found it really
and
interesting.
there's not a directly correct answer.
No.
No.
That's the thing. It isn't a black and white situation. It's
Yeah.
situational, and I think when we grow up in places that we are quite well off,
Mm.
and I mean, like, even as someone who isn't particularly rich, I mean, not rich at all,
Yeah.
like, I know I'm pretty privileged with the fact that I have a roof over my head, I have a
Mm-hmm.
landlord that's not a complete.
A-hole. We can swear on this
Yeah.
podcast.
Oh, you
Yeah.
can.
Yeah.
Oh, good. A
Yeah, we
Yeah.
complete
swear.
Yeah.
We
Oh, yeah.
swear.
We
Oh,
swear.
yeah.
a complete douchebag,
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, and like quite the opposite, just so supportive of like what I
Yeah.
do and loves it and just really values it. And it's like that's rare to find
Mm.
in a rental context, and a lot of that is to do with privilege and people
Mm-hmm.
not understanding how to check it.
Mm.
So it's like, there are an awful lot of people out there that, like, you don't know how it is to be homeless. It is not a good time. I haven't been homeless, but I can empathize that much. Having
Mm.
a roof over your head makes the biggest difference to life. If you
Mm.
have a safe space, and I definitely need one for my brain, without that, like, even just getting to Centrelink or whatever you have to do, very
Mm-hmm.
hard. So you taking a pumpkin, I mean, you might not have a place to cook the pumpkin, and maybe
Someone,
they're
yeah, some people
understanding.
are just eating a raw pumpkin around the corner.
Look, if they're
Um,
doing that, then they should
yeah,
have that pumpkin, and
that's
maybe
But
just
like,
go and offer
yeah,
them to cook the pumpkin for
yeah.
them. Like,
Come into the kitchen.
it's
yeah,
not like they grabbed the pumpkin
yeah,
and smashed it on the ground.
No,
It wasn't a
yeah,
wasteful action. Someone's
no,
used that
no,
that's it.
pumpkin. So I don't
yeah,
know. Yeah.
And
that's
I also
right.
think too,
Yeah,
like even with again reframing that, you can
mm,
look at it through that lens of gratitude of how blessed was I to be able to grow that pumpkin that someone who needed it
yeah,
was able to
yeah,
access it. If I didn't do that, if I didn't
Mm.
grow it and nurture it, that person may not have had a meal.
Yeah. Well,
yeah,
Yeah.
footnote, the
yeah.
person that grew the pumpkin ended up giving an ultimatum and said, if this pumpkin's not back by 5 p.m. on Saturday or whatever, and she's like, I don't care if there's a piece cut out of it.
Shouldn't be
The pumpkin needs to be back. And I was like, okay.
I'm surprised there's now not photos in the community group by anonymous member of just like the pumpkin, on the beach, on a towel with some sunnies on, and maybe sitting back watching.
A ransom note.
Yeah, skip the
Oh, we can laugh
country.
later, but I'm sure they were very upset by their pumpkin. And
Yeah,
again, it's all relative. They might have had a very particular
totally.
design for
I
this
don't know.
pumpkin that
Maybe it's a
Oh,
$50
and
pumpkin. I don't know. Like,
and
it's some
and
specialty
also,
item.
I've been there. I get it. Like, I
Totally.
have some very interesting fruits and things, and like sometimes someone will just come and take it, and you go, oh.
Oh, I was
I
really
haven't
looking
I
forward to
haven't
that.
tasted that yet. Like,
Yeah.
but it's like, but for the most part, hey, if you grow things that are really unusual and never sold in a store, it's the perfect filter because they go, I don't know what that is. I'm not going to take it because
Yeah.
it's probably
I can't eat
poisonous.
life hacks from
Yeah.
Lachie.
Yeah, that's right. It's like, hey, diversify your growing your produce, and
Like,
you're going to
yeah.
bamboozle 90% of the population.
Well, I mean, like, who's coming
Yeah.
into your yard to eat your cactus? You're
Yeah,
like, you
no,
did
they
this
don't.
really
No.
cool video,
Yeah.
and anyone listening, yeah,
The
needs to.
possums. The possums
The
are eating
possums are eating it,
cactus.
yeah, around the
Yeah.
spike.
Yeah.
But
Look,
yeah,
they figure it
check
out.
out Lucky's
Yeah.
socials.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sadly,
So
the fruits of that cactus that were in line with the top of the back fence, they got nailed. They were like
yeah.
perfectly sighted. Yeah.
So have you got any big plans with the business or the yard or any projects that you kind of got coming up that you want to share?
I have a big dream for this year or the coming
Ooh.
years, and it's big plans for Newcastle. And I'm I'm trying to balance my time here, but I'm ready to overcommit to something this cool. So, have you guys ever heard of Ceres in Melbourne? Ceres?
Nope.
Nope.
No. So it's a community. It's a city farm. And
Okay.
so
Wow.
it's a really cool place. I recommend looking it up or going to
Yep.
visit down there if you ever. I mean, quite honestly, if you're going to Melbourne, just visit there. That's the only place I recommend. There's heaps of good stuff, but that's like number one.
Yep.
And so it was like old contaminated industrial land, and
Yep.
a group of people got together and they set up this over many years. They rehabilitated, and they've got it's basically a city farm now, and they do education
Wow.
there. They've got a nursery, they've got food production, they run a
Yep.
market out of it. And it is a very, very good example of what we could have in Newcastle.
Oh,
And they
very cool.
have documentation which is free to access, and it guides you
Yep.
all the way through the processes that they went through and how to do the same in
Wow.
your space. Blah, da, 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 da.
Yep.
So, bum, bum, bum.
Mic
Uh,
drop.
I'm very keen on having something like that in Newcastle itself.
Wow.
And
Amazing.
there happens to be a bunch of land which is kind of floodplains in Broadmeadow,
Hmm.
Yep.
and it's all very fenced off with razor wire, and it has old turnstiles on part of it from the old rail situation, which
Uh-huh.
would be like there's some people that want that heritage listed.
Yep.
And there's just a lot of prospect there, and it doesn't make a lot of sense
Cool.
to develop it because of like the water flow situation. It would be very expensive to do like, and quite
Mm.
short-sighted, I think, to
Yeah.
do
Yep.
to like put all these flows like in underground puddle like piping and things. It'd have
Yeah.
to be
Yeah.
quite sizable if they want to prevent future flash flooding and things anyway. And what's really good at dealing with that situation? Vegetation.
Mm.
What?
Go figure.
Yeah. So yeah, I know. What does nature do better? Literally most things. So, um, so
Pretty much.
basically, yeah, my pipe dream, I guess, is to put together a proposal with a group of people who are very keen
Yeah.
and get backing from the council, and maybe try and annex some of this space for something that's going to contribute to the broader society of Newcastle in a massive way, which I think is
Yeah.
Yeah.
desperately needed.
Oh, it
Um,
is. Pardon the pun, but
yeah.
yeah, Newcastle is ripe for something like that. Like it
Oh,
So
is.
it's
if people
It's
want to get
ready.
involved or volunteer their
absolutely.
time, Lockie, can they get in contact with you and offer their
Uh,
services?
Absolutely. I'm happy to have
Put it
any
out there.
extra energy, hands, brains. The more, the
Yeah.
merrier. It's very early in the piece, so get in while you're like. Well, look, you're gonna be able to get involved anytime as long as, and the more people we have, the more sway we're gonna have with the powers that
Hmm.
Yep.
be.
Yep.
And quite honestly, if they're looking to fulfill their sustainability targets, they're going to want to
Hmm.
be doing a lot more carbon sequestration. They're going to want to
Yep.
be doing a lot more local food production, water cleaning, water usage, like good,
Hmm.
basically food security, water security, and there's so much like social
Yep.
benefit as well. So it's just across the board.
It's a
There's so
huge
much
list.
prospect.
Amazing.
Yeah.
That is such a cool
Yeah.
ambition.
So
So what's the one
it's
in
big,
Melbourne
but
again? Can you just repeat the name for that and how
our
that one's spelled?
series
So, yeah.
Ceres.
Fantastic. So yeah, anyone
Yeah.
that's listening can
Yeah,
catch
have a
that
look.
Leo and
Have a
Jojo one.
look.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, contaminated land isn't a final barrier. There's a lot
No.
of
Yeah.
phytoremediation opportunities there.
Yep.
There's also there's plenty of ways you can grow above ground in the short term while photoremediation's happening, and that can be added to research. Oh man,
Mm-hmm.
there's just the prospects are through the roof. So
Yep.
there's just
Amazing.
a lot of room for a lot of ideas, and
Mm.
yeah, the more the merrier, I think.
We're coming up on an hour now.
Oh, really?
So before we finish up, we like to ask our final grounding question, which is, if you had one piece of permaculture advice to give to somebody, what would that be?
Gosh, yeah, I was trying to decide which one I like the best because I have a lot of advice to give.
Fast five, go, bang, bang, bang,
Yeah,
bang, bang.
uh,
Sorry.
biodiversity is key in all
Yeah,
things.
Yep.
And well, not just biodiversity, diversity, and that could be
yeah,
diversity of energy income,
people.
for your actual
Yeah,
power. It could be diversity of foodstuffs for produce, because if you only grow one thing and that thing has a terrible season, then you've got a problem. If you
Yep.
have more different things you can grow, you've got resilience in your system. And it's the same with all things in the system. You have various different plants, animals, all working in a contiguous way. If one of them drops out because someone has, I don't know, sprayed the outside of their house for spiders and it's drifted across your
mm-hmm.
entire yard, then hopefully you're going to have a few things that are going to fill the gaps, and you're not going to
Mm-hmm.
have a complete collapse of your ecosystem in the short term. Just as an example. um,
Nothing personally happened to
Nothing.
Lachie there.
Yeah.
I have bees, and so I'm pretty like native bees,
Yeah,
stingless bees, and all sorts of other. I've got a lot of big insect hotels and stuff, so I'm very direct about how much I like people doing that in the nearby area.
yeah,
Yep.
totally.
I mean, I'm not mean about it, but I'm like, look, please, it's going to cost you a little bit of money if all my bees die from your actions. It's all, yeah. So
Good on you.
unfortunately, it's hard to control. You can't control what's beyond your
No,
fence
yeah,
line. It's just
You can you can educate and
yeah.
you can request and
That's right.
yeah.
Yeah, and you can just try and generate as much goodwill as possible. But
Yep.
yeah, yeah. So that's a big one, and probably really applicable across the board. And that again,
Yeah.
it applies to the social aspect as well. So if we were
mm,
all just gardeners, we wouldn't have a well-rounded society.
yeah,
And so
Yep.
it's none of what I'm saying is you should all be gardeners. How dare you not have gardening skills or whatever? It's just understand a little bit about where your food's coming from, and that'll give you
yeah,
a huge amount of choosing power, I guess, about
Mm-hmm.
mm,
how you get it and how you support your local growers, that sort of thing.
mm,
um, yeah, and I guess the other good one that comes to mind without going too much longer is managing energy in your own body and mind, and expectations come into that too.
oh,
So
I love that.
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so I'm always telling people, look, this comes from my own experience, right? Because I'm
Yeah,
perfectionist. I fight it a lot, and I'm like, if I can't do it big and amazing and perfectly, I don't want to do it. It's overwhelming, And so it's one thing that I've learned, and as permaculture's helped a lot with this, is takes bite-sized chunks of something
Mm-hmm.
that you're trying to achieve, and something that
mm,
is manageable for your time and your energy levels, because we're all busy. We're all trying to put bread on the table. We're all trying
yeah,
to, raise family or go on dates or do whatever you're doing.
yeah,
And so our lives are basically full a lot of the time, unless you just
yeah,
Yeah.
cut it out, which is
yeah,
not really doable for most people. So
yeah,
start small, take bite-sized chunks, and consolidate those chunks before you go out in the next chunk.
Mm-hmm.
mm,
And if you're going to do chunks, and say this is in developing a garden, don't do this chunk and then do a chunk separated from that satellite over there. Do one that's adjacent, and then you're
mm,
not having all that extra exposed space, which is a point where that energy is going to be taken back. So
Mm-hmm.
I
yeah,
guess, say if you're trying to, I don't know, let's use a cool example like removing a lawn. If you're sheet mulching a lawn and your lawn is huge, just pick
yeah,
maybe a 4 or 5 meter square, mark that out, put grass barriers on the edges, because of course that grass is going to want to run back into where
Mhm.
you're sheet mulching and you're sorting out the grass in that patch, and sheet
Yeah.
mulch that area. You'll only need so much material, so much energy, so much time. Make sure that goes well, and then you can plant it out, and then you're ready for the next step out. And so it's actually, you get that psychological feedback, that like
Yeah.
reward,
Yeah.
which actually helps and gives you more energy for the next steps as well.
Yeah.
Whereas it's quite the opposite. If you go, oh yeah, I put all my energy here, and then I'll do this one over there, and then you go, oh, you get really busy with work, and you come back and like the grass has completely reinvaded your spaces.
Yeah.
And you
Yeah,
go,
and you're like, oh, well, that didn't
oh,
work.
I
Be
just
able
want
to
to
do
lie on the
things
couch now.
small and test and measure along the way, and that's something that I definitely learned when we bought our property.
We've been talking about it a lot because I've just got some land that we've purchased, and it's just grass, kangaroos, and a few gum trees. So it's kind of like, what do you do first? You can't do it all.
Where
I
do you
want to do
start?
it all.
Yeah.
We've only got limited money. Like, how do you make that work? But I think that point you made about that mental energy is really interesting too, because we've been talking a bit about the power of saying no, to be able to say yes to more, and taking on too much, and you can't do it all. And when
don't bite off more than you can chew. There's a good adage.
Yeah, we call it in our house. We call it bandwidth.
Bandwidth,
like we have conversations and go, I don't have much bandwidth today. Like it means I have this.
Fuck off,
basically.
So please, I have I've got a noisy brain day. I can't deal with this right now.
That's it. It's like I can deal with this, like the critical stuff. I can do this. Anything else is too hard. Can't cope. Go away. Yeah.
Another one I've heard used for is spoons. It's like, I've only got so many spoons. It comes from a book. Yeah, so that's just if people are they've heard that and they're like, bandwidth, spoons, are they the same thing? Yeah, probably.
You know what comes to mind? Well, after you said that, the song, "No More Fucks to Give."
Yeah. And that's a book too. It's like, how many fucks do you have, and you got to choose where you put your fucks. Because you only have a limited amount of fuck bucks.
Yep, that's it, and you got to spend them wisely.
That's right. That's right. Yep. Yeah. So,
well, thank you so much for having us,
no worries.
giving us your time, and taking the time out of your busy schedule to talk to us. It's been a pleasure.
Yep, thoroughly enjoyed it. Had so much fun. Lots of laughs. I don't think we've laughed quite this much in a while.
We've tried a few times, and guests just look at us blankly.
Hey, if you're not laughing, like, I it's my life force. I need it. Like,
we do warn people. We can be a bit
silly.
Yeah.
Look,
we don't take ourselves seriously.
If you take yourself or life too seriously, you're setting yourself up for some potential larger hurdles, I think.
Yeah.
I feel like it's a very beneficial way to approach the world, especially when it's kind of dark out there. It's dark. Yeah, and I feel a lot. So got to laugh that off a bit.
That's it. You got to keep the energy high, keep those vibrations up.
That's right.
Yep.
Well, we'll put all of your the links we've talked about in the show, and all the stuff that you're doing and your socials on the show notes. And go say hi to Lachie.
Hi. Say hi in person. All right. Thanks for having me.
Our pleasure.
All right. Bye.
Thanks for listening to the Practical Permaculture podcast. Jump onto our Facebook group to keep the chat going and to look for any resources that we mentioned on today's show. Look in the show notes.
And if you liked the episode today, then subscribe. Please give us a review and share. And if you didn't, then that's okay. We'll sure you'll find the right podcast for you.
Bye.
Bye.